So, we always get people asking us or asking me, what do I daily drive? What is in my personal collection? And I haven't really given an update of that. And I think I should because I feel a little guilty. But this is a very cool story about essentially what was my dream car and actually now purchasing it and driving it every day. So, as you guys know, I had the incredible opportunity probably 2-3 years ago to purchase essentially something even more important than my dream car, which was a Diablo SE30 Yoda, one of very few factory cars produced. My dream car growing up, it was always two cars, was a CLK 430 AMG or a 55 AMG and a Diablo SE30, a purple car. I had never at that point imagined I would have the opportunity to buy a Yoda. It was a dream even as a company to have the opportunity to buy it, let alone myself. And quite frankly, I'm not going to talk about figures, but Yodas transact between $700,000 and over $1 million. So it was something way out of my financial means and budget. But at the time, my wife was pregnant, and we were looking to buy our first home, or our apartment, because she was going to be giving birth to a child, and it's something as part of, I don't know, the American dream. You buy an apartment or a house, and you have a family, etc. And when the car arrived, I think she was 4 or 5 months pregnant, and I was just overtaken with emotions. I realized that I was in love with this car. And I didn't even ask her if I could buy it. She actually brought up to me, dude, you should buy this car. So I ended up taking out a loan. We ended up not buying the apartment, and I ended up buying this SE30 Yoda. Now, time goes on, things change in our lives, and I always said that I would essentially keep this car for my son. This was something that was going to be an heirloom or a legacy thing. To have the opportunity to buy it was really big, and it was a huge financial stretch. I realized with let's call it a year-old boy, that I needed to potentially get a house and a yard, something, a pool, anything, to keep a young boy busy, because he was basically destroying our apartment. And our rental apartment, so even worse, we didn't own it. So we had started going for walks in a cool little area and realized that I fell in love with a potential house, and I was basically telling a very good client and friend about about this house, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse to basically trade the SE30 Yoda for a purple SE30, which was originally my dream car, and a early low-body LP400S Countach, but that was a complete project car. And I said, wow, I don't really have a car of my own. My wife has an SUV that we got. But man, it would be cool to daily drive until I sell it, this LP400S restoration project. And I thought it'd be very cool, around Miami, it'd be something funky, until I realized that I'd eventually have to be selling this car to close on the house, and I was just, my goal is to just keep the SE30 and potentially buy our first home finally. And I realized that, okay, this was not going to be a great idea to basically try to daily drive this LP400S. It was noisy. I mean, it was a blast to drive. It was like a go-kart, but this is something you drive on Sunday or Saturday. The AC is not great on those early Countaches. And I actually almost had a woman in an SUV in my parking garage drive right over me because she didn't see me. And after that, I realized, okay, around Miami, around downtown Miami, it's not the place for anything of value or anything that you really care about. So I wanted to my goal was to find some cool, cheap car that I could afford, that would be, perfect and fun and represent what I loved. So I was actually looking, because we have a child, I was looking for an E55, like a 99 to 2001 E55, perfect with the back seats. I think they are awesome because they're really essentially in many ways some of the last AMG, really sort of limited production AMG cars. The first, you could say, besides the C36 and the C43 AMGs, that between Mercedes and AMG after Mercedes, the merger between the two companies. So I thought, wow, this would be the perfect car for all the time. Now, let's go back. I'm 17 years old, and I was working for my father on the weekends and summers, and I was essentially working for free with the goal that I would get my first car. And, every summer I worked 7 days a week. I started, sweeping floors, washing cars. Eventually I was detailing the undercarriage on cars. Then at one point I was doing all the prep work for his body work. So I would do all the taping, and working for my dad was an incredible experience, but it was tough work. I mean, I worked, he was on me. God bless. He pushed me hard, and he's very OCD. But I definitely learned work ethic through summers and weekends with him, with the goal of one day my parents would buy me, a cool car or something as my own car. And at the time, Mercedes had just launched the CLK series, which to me was the coolest car. The lines were great. The styling I thought was way ahead of its time. It had the 4 round headlights, which was iconic of the CLK GTR, and I just thought the cars were just so cool. It reminded me of like a modern day SEC or something like that. And the used examples were not that expensive. They were between $20,000 and $30,000. And if you got a 430, you got a big V8, which sounded awesome. They were pretty fast. And then obviously if you got the 55, I mean, the CLK 55 was the fastest production car that AMG had ever made at that point. So imagine, I mean, this is like, a complete rocket ship in 2001 when they were first launched, and that's all I wanted. A new car would have been too expensive for my family. My father was a mechanic. He made a great living, but it's not like he was some rich guy. And even a $20,000 to $30,000 car for a 17-year-old was a huge stretch. And my father didn't believe in leasing cars or financing cars. He was a very old school guy. So I had been working for probably 4 summers and weekends for 4 years, and in my mind I had this like savings pot for this dream car of mine. So back then there was no autotrader.com, there was nothing like that. You had your hard copy of Auto Trader, and you'd go through the classifieds and you look for cars. And I would go, every time I'd go to the gas station, I'd grab one, I'd look, and I'd mark up all the CLK 430s, and I'll never forget there was a CLK 430 Lorenzer, which was very cool then. It had the Lorenzer wheels, the full body kit. It was owned by a ball player. Sound system, I mean, this was like my dream car. It was black, chrome wheels. It looked like a drug dealer probably owned the car, but I wanted this car. And we went to go inspect that car, and my dad, being so OCD and being fairly cheap as well, said, no, the guy wants too much money, and I'm not going to pay that. So I was pushing on my parents that, hey, listen, I need a car. Like, at the time I was driving a myriad of XJSs that my dad would buy and sell. So if you ask me about Jaguar XJS examples today, I hate them. I mean, I really, because it was something I was forced to drive, and I was in these, $5,000, $10,000 XJSs, and they were braking, and it was a luxurious car. I mean, the wood and the big V12, I mean, they were definitely cool, but it wasn't what I wanted when my friends were showing up to high school and, Civic Type Rs and all these like wacky, cool freaking cars that were popular during the time. And all I wanted was a CLK or something along those lines that at least I could fit into, that hot import nights era. And I definitely did not fit in with an XJS. At the time, there was a college program called Florida Bright Futures, where you basically, if you went to a school in Florida, it was basically all of your school was covered. It was like a scholarship program. You had to get certain grades, and I was a pretty nerdy kid. I was very studious. I went to an art school. I got like all A's and B's, and my parents said, hey, keep getting good grades, you're gonna get this. And my dad finally said, if you don't go out of state, and you stay in Florida where I don't have to pay for your college, I'll get you whatever car you want up to a certain price. And I was just like, done, I'm going to a Florida school. This is my dream car. I want a CLK. So we ended up finding a beautiful Glacier White 2001 CLK 430. I believe it was like 28,000 or something like that. And this was like, it was like I hit the lotto. It was like I won the Powerball. I thought I was the coolest guy in the world. And not that a car should give you confidence, but I was a very skinny, short, young guy that I didn't have that confidence yet with girls. I didn't have that type of confidence that I do now, but it's not because of cars or anything like that. You just grow confidence as you get older and you realize who you are as a person. I had no confidence at all. So I was completely connected to this CLK 430 as the most important part of my life at that moment. So he gets this car. I remember driving it to high school and cleaning it and covering it at night. And this car was everything to me. And he wouldn't even let me drive it on certain days. I could only drive it on like Fridays, and I could only drive it on, like I could never have it out past 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. So he was even being very picky about this car. And I had to clean the inside of the wheels and all these little things. But I loved the car, and it was absolutely stunning. Had a blast with the car. But after like 3 or 4 months, he started bringing it to his warehouse to like keep and like covered. And I was like, wait a minute, like this was supposed to be my car. And one day, one of his really great clients came in and said, oh, what's under the cover? And he took off the cover and he goes, wow, what a beautiful car. My daughter needs a car. She's turning 16 and this would be the perfect car for her. So he sold it to his client. I think he made, a profit. And I was crushed. I actually remember like getting like so emotionally upset, I believe I cried. And it's terrible to think that you'd cry over selling a material thing. It's sort of stupid, but that car meant so much to me, and working hard and getting good grades and not going to a college outside of Florida, that I was really bummed. So ends up, I moved out, and I was probably still driving XJSs or something like that at that point. And I ended up saving up enough money, and I ended up buying my own car and getting financed probably like 2 years after that. And but I always had this like really angry feeling over this CLK and what had happened. And fast forward, I am looking online for E55s, and I start realizing that these CLKs, and especially the CLK 55, which production numbers were pretty low. I mean, I think they built 1,000 cars for the US as a coupe, were cheap. I mean, like high mileage cars were selling for like $5,000, $6,000. And I'm like, I almost have to buy a CLK now just because they're cheap. They're fun to drive. They handle really well. A 55 would be super fast. And it's something I sort of have to do because this was my dream car. I mean, I probably looked at 400 cars in Auto Trader in period. I think I just have to buy one. I know about all the options. I know all the specs. So, and as you guys know, we love AMG cars here, and I love AMG cars. And I said, wow, this really sort of represents who I am today. I'm not going to be that worried about the car. God forbid someone sideswipes me in Miami. It's not like driving an LP 400S Countach. And I end up finding a car at a dealer up in Massachusetts, and I get super excited. 48,000 miles, silver black, the last year of the coupe, so an 02 CLK 55, loaded up car, owned by an 80-year-old man. I mean, the car looked gorgeous in photos. So I was so excited. So I went in like a hard ass, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna negotiate it down, and this is what the market is. And the guy was like, no. So then, and imagine we're now arguing over a couple $1,000s on, $15,000, $18,000. I think the dealer was asking $18,000. And I go in and I'm like, I'll give you 10. And he's like, no. So I even call a very important car dealer, Matthew, the Cultivated Collector, who, I mean, this is a guy that deals in Jaguar XJR 15s and Ferrari Enzos and significant Enzo era Ferrari cars. And I was being so cheap about this stupid car. I'm like, hey, I know you know this dealer in Massachusetts. Can you try to get me a deal? So he reaches out and puts me in a group email. And the dealer's like, no, like it's a really nice car. Like you can't negotiate that much. I'll give you a couple grand off. So I ended up realizing how stupid I sounded trying to get like some incredible score and using like guys that are very busy to buy this car. So I ended up saying, you know what, I'm just gonna take it. We ended up negotiating at $16,000. And I have to admit, I was so excited getting this car. I even called our trucker and I'm like, hey, find someone right away that can pick up this car and bring it right here. So the car arrives, and I have to say, I was excited as any other car that's arrived here. It could be a $4 million car, $1 million car, because of my emotional attachment to these cars. And because of, I think they are really great cars. I mean, they sound excellent. You know, you take off ESP and you punch it and you're gonna light up the tires. Not saying I did that all the way up and down our street, but you can. And sound system's not bad. The AC is great. It does everything you could ever want. It's got xenon lights. So it was also a big jump from me, who I'm normally driving these vintage cars with, you know, okay AC, you know, decent power steering or no power steering. So the car is phenomenal to drive. But most importantly, it sort of fills this circle in my life. And sort of to have the opportunity to buy my dream car now, and have the opportunity to be able to experience it and enjoy it, and know that no one's going to sell it in a couple months from now. I'm the master of this domain, is very, very cool. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I don't think that it matters sometimes how much a car is, for it to give you an emotional feeling or an exciting moment. And I daily drive it every day. I don't live that far from our dealership, but I have a blast. And you know, eventually once we get a house, and maybe it'll be in South Miami, it'll be a longer drive, so I'll enjoy that as well. And I think your passion and your dream car doesn't have to be a McLaren F1. It could be something much more modest. And I'm very excited to share my CLK 55 with you guys.